Okay, we are ready to talk about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his personal information. This is a picture of his house in near Hyde Park, New York. Um, Very large house, and it's got a beautiful view of the Hudson River in the back. This is just down the street from the Vanderbilt, so this is the very wealthy neighborhood. Um, there was When a person is president, they get sent gifts and stuff from all over the place. And he had this statue that was made of him and sent. And I don't remember exactly where it was sent from or what, but it was there. I liked this picture because this is the big living room that we could see, and you could see the wheelchair here. And after he got polio as an adult, he was in a wheelchair for most of the time. They tried to hide it a little bit, and you didn't see it a lot in pictures and in newspapers, but it was mostly how he got around. And then this is his tombstone, and it's got his and Eleanor are both on here, and they're buried side by side here in their beautiful garden out here beside the home. It was beautiful, beautiful flowers and everything. Okay, he was born in 1882, and he was the only child of wealthy parents. I've already talked a little bit about Sarah and just how, well, the word is doting. Doting is like, oh, baby, are you okay? You know, always taking care of you, always right over you. And probably part of that was because he was their only child, and she was trying to care well for him. Um, and he was educated well. He was educated by private tutors at first, and then in very elite, which means for the wealthy, private boys' schools. Um, he became a lawyer and then a senator. Around this time, before this, okay, so right in here is when he marries Eleanor, and he eventually becomes a senator. He serves as Assistant Secretary of the Navy under Wilson. And then right about that time, so 1921, this is the end of, this is after World War One. He develops polio. He starts to get sick, and he's not exactly sure what it is, and then he can't move. And this was a debilitating disease that attacked people during this time, and it was called infantile um, polio. And a lot of times it did affect children. Children got it when they were young, and then it affected them their whole lives. And now we don't see it now pretty much because there was a vaccine developed, and it pretty much got rid of the whole thing. But he got it when he was 39, and he didn't know what it was at first, and then they realized it was polio, and the doctors basically just said, well, you're just going to be paralyzed. And basically, unfortunately, when a lot of people get sick, a lot of people will just tell them, well, get used to it. This is your new life. I guess you can't do what you always thought you wanted to do. Well, but do you think that's true? And some people can just accept that. Okay, well, I guess I can't anymore. But then there are those that succeed beyond what anybody expects, because they say, you can't tell me what I'm going to accomplish or what I can't accomplish. I'll work really hard and do what I can. And he worked really hard to strengthen his legs. He went to warm springs, places that had the natural springs, and worked on his legs. He swam a lot. The water is really helpful for people that want to strengthen their legs. And so he was able to strengthen his legs enough to be able to stand. And he had these braces made for his legs that kind of locked in place. Like when he stood, he kind of locked these braces in place and he could stand, which gave him the appearance of being able to walk and get around. But really, that was about all. There was some times where, as president, he would walk in and he would be holding on to people's arms, and he was almost they were almost carrying him because he was walking very legged. And but most of the time he got around in a wheelchair. But the newspapers didn't present this image. They wanted to present a healthy, well man, someone who wasn't struggling with this. So there were lots of pictures when he was standing behind a podium, and you could see him holding onto the podium for strength and for stability because he needed it. But his mom, after this happened, his mom wanted to say, "Oh, you don't need to be in politics anymore. You move home, you live at home, and I'll take care of you." And she just wanted that to be the end. And she was just going to take care of him for the rest of his life. Eleanor, and he had a good friend of his, Lewis Howe, who encouraged him to get back into politics. No, this is what you want to do. You're good at this. You can make a difference here, and you need to get back into doing what you wanted. I kind of think Eleanor wanted him to get back in because she wanted to be in the game. She wanted to have as much influence as she could, and if he was, she could also. Not 100% sure, but I think I'm probably right on that. But anyway, he did decide that he was not going to give up and that he was going to continue to be in politics, and he was working on his strength and gaining his strength back. So even after he got polio, he ran for governor of New York, and he supported the candidate who was running against Hoover when Hoover ran for the first time. That candidate didn't win, but FDR did win the governorship of New York in 1928. And during the Depression, so he was governor of New York, a large state, during the Depression. And so he began, even in New York, to start a bunch of programs that were helping families during the Depression and helping them with money. And by the end of 1932, 1 out of every 10 families in New York was receiving help from one of his state programs that he had started. And so he becomes president, moves into the White House, and what are some things that he does? He uses the radio a lot to communicate with the nation, and this was very smart of him because what he was basically doing, he was just like the president is doing in the press conferences on TV. He is able to communicate directly to the people and say, look, this is what I want you to know. And FDR used what he had at the time, which was the radio, and he talked directly to them. And this was important during the Depression because he would have messages and he would try to explain what was going on with the banks, because where panic comes from is when people don't understand. And so he would get on and he would explain, okay, this is what's happening with the banks. This is what I want you to do. And he had kind of a calming voice that people loved to listen to. And these times on the radio were called his fireside chats. And why does he call it that? He wants it to seem like he is sitting right in your living room with you and that he is bringing you comfort and help. Under Eleanor's leading, while he was president, he appointed more women to federal posts than any previous president. He also was the first president to have a woman on his cabinet. So this is someone who knows the strength of women. He's seen it in his mother. He's seen it in his wife. He's very drawn to strong women, and he is not going to push them out of politics. He is going to be part of the influence and them having influence in political life, and that is pretty cool. He also included African Americans in the job programs that he started and that they put people in so that they could have a way to earn money during the Depression. He allowed African Americans to be part of those programs, but they were still segregated. Okay, so it's one little step forward. We still have a long way to go as far as equality comes, but is concerned. But he does allow them to join those programs. Okay, a little bit more about what he liked personally. everyone knew this about him. He was a huge stamp collector. I even saw something today that had him at his president's desk looking at his stamps. That when he had time in between meetings, he liked to get out his stamp collection. About 30 minutes a day, if he had time, he would pull out his magnifying glass and look at his stamp collection. And while he was president, the president approves stamps because that's under the federal government, the post office is. And so he approved more than 200 different stamps. And and even did some sketching of his own of what he wanted the stamps to look like. And they were kind of supporting what he wanted to support. So when he comes out with his new deal, we're going to talk about next time, and he starts supporting all these new programs, he wants to get them in the public eye and he wants to put them in a positive light. What does he do? Wants to put it on a stamp. This is a stamp, and lots of other countries, I think it said over 80 different countries have honored him in stamps because he loves stamps. And he actually increased the stamp collecting as a hobby in the United States. But if you look at this stamp, look right here. Do you see a mistake? And this is the cool thing about stamps. Stamps become popular whether they're really good or have mistakes. If you have a stamp with a mistake on it, it is very rare and worth a lot of money. Because what they did is they probably went back and fixed that mistake, and then the stamp with the mistake is rare. So you want those. But look at this one. Look at his hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers and a thumb. Do you have 5 fingers when your hand is like this? No, you have 4 fingers and a thumb. So on this stamp, he has 5 fingers and a thumb. I think that's funny. And then this, when he was running for president, the Stamp Collectors Association, which I didn't even know the word for it. It's a philatelic society, promoted him as president because he was a stamp collector for president, and he gets the stamp of approval. I like that poster. He also enjoyed sailing, and he was the first sitting president to ride in a plane. So remember what I mean by sitting president. Doesn't mean he's sitting down. It means he's president at the time. Okay? He was the longest serving president. He was elected 4 times. 4 times. Never happened before. He did not follow the precedent that George Washington set because then it wasn't a law. Now, no one can run that many times. 2 is your max. Okay? But he was elected 4 times, but he didn't serve. He served really about 12 years because he died right at the beginning of his 4th presidency on April 12th, 1945. And then Truman becomes president. And one of his famous quotes is, "The only thing to fear is fear itself." The only thing to fear is fear itself. So what does that mean? It means that what we should really fear is when we are afraid. That's what our biggest fear should be, is when we find ourselves afraid, that we should be brave and continue no matter what. And we can see that in his life. Okay? All right. Put some questions down, some thoughts, some things you want to know a little bit more about that maybe I didn't touch on, and maybe I can do a little bit more research and find out something for you.